mainstream media's coverage of climate change has become a contentious issue, with some arguing that it is being used as a tool to oppress Christians. While this claim may seem far-fetched, there are several ways in which the media's portrayal of climate change can be seen as having a disproportionate impact on Christian communities. One of the primary ways in which this occurs is through the perpetuation of a narrative that positions Christianity as being at odds with environmentalism. This narrative is often perpetuated through the media's focus on supposed contradictions between Christian teachings and the need to protect the environment. For example, some media outlets have highlighted the fact that many Christians interpret the biblical concept of dominion over the earth as a justification for exploiting natural resources rather than being stewards of the environment. This portrayal ignores the fact that many Christian denominations have a long history of environmental activism and have been at the forefront of efforts to protect the environment. Furthermore, the media's focus on the supposed anti-environmentalism of Christians can be seen as a form of oppression, as it creates a narrative that positions Christians as being outside of the mainstream of environmental thought. This can have a number of negative consequences, including marginalizing Christian voices on environmental issues and creating a sense of isolation among Christians who are concerned about the environment. It can also perpetuate a sense of guilt and shame among Christians, who may feel that their faith is inherently at odds with their desire to protect the environment. Another way in which the mainstream media uses climate change to oppress Christians is through the promotion of a secular, scientific worldview that is often at odds with Christian teachings. The media's focus on the scientific consensus around climate change, while important for raising awareness about the issue, can also be seen as a way of promoting a worldview that is hostile to Christian values. For example, the media's emphasis on the idea that climate change is a solely human-caused phenomenon can be seen as a way of undermining the Christian concept of a sovereign God who is active in the world. Additionally, the media's coverage of climate change often ignores the fact that many Christians are already engaged in efforts to address the issue. For example, many Christian denominations have launched initiatives to reduce their carbon footprint, promote sustainable living, and support environmental activism. These efforts are often ignored by the media, which instead focuses on the supposed anti-environmentalism of Christians. This creates a narrative that positions Christians as being opposed to environmentalism, rather than as being actively engaged in efforts to protect the environment. The media's use of climate change to oppress Christians can also be seen in a way that it covers issues related to religious freedom. For example, the media's coverage of efforts to restrict the use of fossil fuels often ignores the fact that these efforts can have a disproportionate impact on Christian communities. Many Christian organizations, such as churches and schools, rely on fossil fuels to operate, and efforts to restrict their use can have a significant impact on these communities. However, the media often ignores these concerns, instead focusing on the supposed environmental benefits of restricting fossil fuel use. In conclusion, the mainstream media's coverage of climate change can be seen as a form of oppression against Christians. The media's perpetuation of a narrative that positions Christianity as being at odds with environmentalism, its promotion of a secular, scientific worldview, and its ignoring of Christian efforts to address climate change all contribute to a sense of marginalization and isolation among Christians. Furthermore, the media's coverage of issues related to religious freedom often ignores the concerns of Christian communities, instead focusing on the supposed environmental benefits of restricting fossil fuel use. As such, it is essential that the media takes a more nuanced approach to covering climate change, one that acknowledges the diversity of Christian perspectives on the issue and promotes a more inclusive and respectful dialogue.